onto your butts because Nintendo has just screwed over everybody that likes to play video games, including you and me. And this one's gonna be really bad, but you know what? Just kind of soften the blow a little bit. Let's put these on just to make it seem a little bit less awful. So Nintendo has seen what Warner Brothers did with the Nemesis system and their patent and said, you know what? What if we made it worse? And so what they've essentially done is they've patented summoning characters and having them battle. Yeah, so let's get into why that's awful for games. In a recent patent that was approved because, I don't know, it's Nintendo, summoning of characters to do battle is now a patent owned by, well, Nintendo. And yes, it really is that insanely broad. The specifics as reported from Video Games Chronicles are as follows. A console or other system is being used to run a video game from storage. The player controls a character in a virtual space. The player can perform and input commands to make a sub-character appear, i.e. summon another character. If there's an enemy where the sub-character appears, the player can control a battle between the sub-character and the enemy. If there's no enemy where the sub-character appears, the sub-character will automatically move around. The player can move the sub-character to a different location on the field, and if an enemy is there, they can control a battle between the sub-character and the enemy. So yes, it's broad. This is not simply as simple as like, oh, we are patenting or we are trying to patent like monsters or pocket monsters or Pokemon. And it's not, this is not an IP protection case. This is the patenting of gameplay. In the article from Video Games Chronicle, they go on to explain how this could potentially even like impact games that are already out and or future games in that series, like Pikmin or the Persona series, all because it's a freaking summoning mechanic. The immediate thing this draws to mind is the nemesis system, the system in which by an enemy killing you, that enemy gets stronger, thus becoming your nemesis. If you've forgotten this system existed, it wouldn't be all that surprising as it's only been used in 2 games and then never again. Ironically, 2 games that used other systems that are not patented by Ubisoft of basically how the gameplay and combat of how things work in the Assassin's Creed games. The Nemesis system lost a couple attempts to patent until finally getting approval in 2021, a system that was used by Monolith under Warner Brothers for the Shadow of Mordor games and potentially a new Wonder Woman game until, well, the Monolith was shut down in 2025 and that game was canceled. But don't you worry your pretty little head, because even though the studio that was making the game that was still going to use the Nemesis system and made the prior games with the Nemesis system doesn't exist anymore, well, it's still patented until 2036. The Nemesis system is a prime example of why patents like this may serve a greedy corporation but are detrimental to game developers and players, and opening up more of them like this ridiculous Nintendo patent just further narrows any space for creativity or innovation in a space that is already an amalgamation of different creative ideas. It greatly limits the ability to do these things and to innovate. These patents are for concepts. They're not for like code or they're not for like IP. They're the concepts of gameplay. But it's not just that those specific instances of the patent are what hurt the gaming industry and us players of games. It's the vagueness and general fear. You could technically make a game with a sort of nemesis system right now. Try to figure out a way to do so without infringing the patent. But who's going to? Even if it's not infringing, ultimately that wouldn't stop Warner Brothers from taking the developer to court. Even a lost case by Warner Brothers would still harm the developer who had tried it. It scares developers away, pushing them into safer spaces from anything that could even remotely be close to what is patented. This is where some of the greatest harm comes. Nintendo doesn't have to lift a finger for this to have a negative impact. Fear of litigation alone is enough to make many developers reconsider or change their designs. What I don't get is how this is possible in gaming. I write books, so that's the thing that I like compare it to most. And I totally understand like copyright, you know, and IP protection. I can't go and write a book about Driss Joe Erden, right? That's not my character, and I can't just make that character my own. But the idea that I wouldn't be able to have an elf in my book that may have 2 swords, that may be not really liked by a lot of people around them, and just kind of has like this sense of code and honor. Well, that being something I couldn't do because, well, R.A. Salvatore owned the concept of an elf with 2 swords is freaking wild to me. This isn't just IP protection, this is utter pure anti-competitive greed. This is Warner Brothers and Nintendo saying, we're going to continue making dogshit games because we now own part of the reason people play those dogshit games. It gives a license to continue to spit out trash because now other people are barred from competing. Ultimately, this is anti-consumer, anti-gamer, anti-developer, and anti-art, and it freaking sucks. For a long time, I've thought that the Nemesis system getting the patent that it did was going to harm the industry, and I can kind of see this as a direct way of that happening. This is another type of concept patent on gaming that will harm the industry as a whole. But this one seems even worse. It's so wide-ranging. Even as I just thought about it, as I was sitting there thinking about what games could this potentially be, because it's so broad. It's really just about summoning something to battle. Well, the first thing that came to mind is Monster Rancher, a game that I loved that released in 1997. Well, that game, releasing like roughly a year or so after Pokemon, is exactly what would have been not allowed in this. That game is a monster battler where you train and summon monsters. The way you did it was using a CD, like a game CD or a music CD, like taking Celine Dion and putting that CD in your PlayStation, and you'd get a new creature that you could go and battle. That game wouldn't have been able to happen if for this patent. A future Monster Rancher is not possible. Even games like Final Fantasy, when you're summoning Ifrit or Shiva, are those gonna have to change or not be possible because of this patent? What about Elden Ring and their summoning bells? Is that one okay because you don't take direct control over the summoning creature? Or is that not okay because it's still a summoning battler that moves around in a virtual space? What about fighting games when you summon in a sub-character to come and help you? Do those ones count or do they not count? Basically, this is a damn core mechanic in so many past, present, and future games, and even with some of the additional bullet points like being able to move the sub-character to different locations in the field, it leaves so much up to interpretation. It's just wild. And that's the problem. The interpretation, the fear, the general cooling that this will have on the gaming industry, because you don't want Nintendo, which is notoriously a very litigious company, to come after you or your indie game or even your AA game because they think maybe you may have come too close to violating this patent. Again, Nintendo doesn't have to win the case for this to be an issue. They don't even have to enforce the case for this to be an issue. Fear will always win out. Fear of putting money or time and development into a game, fearing that it'll actually cause issues in the future. That's also why we haven't seen any iterations on the Nemesis system, despite that patent never being challenged in court as being hey, this is a violation of this patent. It's fear. Corporate greed here wins again, and we all lose. The developers lose, and you and I lose. This sucks. I don't know how else to put it. It just sucks.